I'm Leonard Nimoy. Join me for In Search of...
An argument. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Jim Gentili. We are recording this on September 11th, 2024 at approximately 7 p.m. Eastern Time, a little less than 24 hours after the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, in which Donald Trump spent an inordinate amount of time trying to scare people into thinking that immigrants were trying to pursue their dogs for illicit purposes, but actually it was Donald Trump who screwed the pooch. We'll be talking, I've been working on that all day, folks. We'll be talking more about the debate. But first, I am joined by my colleagues, John Henley, Shelley Cummings, Peggy Bennett, Beth Shannon, and we have some internal podcast stuff to talk about. First of all, we're 1 minute into this episode, and am I the only one that's missing Ian?
No.
I
Ian
mean,
was
seriously. I feel bereft. What can I say? Shelley, you have nothing to worry about, but I have a serious crush on your boyfriend.
Yes, he is such a good man. There are so many other topics we didn't dive into. Like, he has had 2 near-death days in his life, like serious near-death days.
If we start talking about that, I will cry. So let's
and none of them have to do with this date, but they were very, really scary things that were, by the stroke of luck, God, all the gods, or whatever, he missed that bullet. So it was. I should have teed that part up because it was very interesting. But there was.
Well, we're definitely going to have
He'll be back.
He'll be back. Yes.
He loved every minute of it.
So, second item is a little behind the scenes for you dedicated podcast listeners. Is the way this works. After we finish recording an episode, John takes the responsibility for what is the hardest part of this, which is editing and posting the episode. And I draft up the show notes, and then I circulate it to everyone. And then typically they are vastly improved after my initial draft. So the last time, for the last episode, I drafted the show notes, and John extensively rewrote them and very much improved them, and I agreed that they were improved. So then, to my surprise, when John actually published the episode, he didn't bother to use his revised version. He wrote it again without bothering to tell anyone.
Yeah. You're talking about the email, or are you talking about
I'm talking about what is posted on the podcast, the show notes, the description. You rewrote it again. Why?
I don't remember rewriting it, but
I'm sure you don't, because you don't think about these things. You just do them. This is what life with John Henley.
But Jim, was the version he ultimately posted even improved more?
No, it was not as good as the version he rewrote.
The one I rewrote is on the website.
No, it's not, John. I have the text of the two things.
I'll read it
Don't
to you.
trump about this. I can spend valuable time on this podcast.
I like this because
both sets of the text to show the differences.
We are
but I don't think we need to do that.
Finally living up to the title of this podcast.
Exactly.
So there are
I just want to
30
say
places
that I have been his friend for
things,
almost
and I might have
30
gotten
years,
confused.
and this is what it is like to be John's friend. We love him anyway.
All right, in my defense,
there's no defense.
I am consciously and intentionally trying to do less work on the podcast, and one of the ways I'm doing that is I'm kind of moving very quickly.
But you managed to do more work. How is it less work to rewrite it again?
No, I didn't. I had already written that. It was, I didn't remember what I had.
All right, enough about this. John will do it again, despite any pledges he makes. But it gives us something to do. I was thinking that we should do a future episode about our favorite breakup songs. Anybody have any thoughts about that? I was listening to the Rumors album by Fleetwood Mac, which of course is the ultimate breakup song album.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
I just thought we should do that, but
that's a
it
great
sounds
idea.
like all of you are not enthusiastic.
Well, Rumors. I pick Rumors.
That's
Can we
not
talk
a
about it
song,
for an
that's
hour?
album.
I don't have any songs.
You don't have any favorite breakup songs? Well, you don't have.
I could
well,
probably think of
isn't
something.
your favorite Rolling Stone song, unless you've changed that, is in fact a breakup song?
Sympathy for the Devil?
No, yes.
You can't always get what you
Is
want.
Angie still your favorite Rolling
Sorry,
Stone song?
I do
That's
love
clearly
Angie,
a breakup
yes.
song, right?
I do love
So
Angie.
you could go with Angie if you can't think of anything else, right? I mean, there are so many breakup songs. You could do not a episode, but an entire podcast about Bob Dylan's breakup songs. Don't think twice. All right,
How
it
about-
ain't me, babe? Just like a woman. Sooner or later, most likely you go your way and I'll go mine.
How about Jim? You just give us some, and then we'll give feedback. You can rank them because let me give you me. I'm the '90s Brit pop.
Yeah,
guy
so they had breakup songs.
who listened to things like New Order and Joy Division, where
they had
they intentionally and purposely wrote nonsense lyrics. So
they had
I
breakup
don't even
songs.
listen to the words. I just
Okay.
listen to the music. So I don't.
Right.
I'm not.
You
I
tell
don't
me.
even
You
know
tell me.
Rumors was
I'll
breakups.
send you a list of breakup songs that are in your genre, and
I
you
know,
pick
but
one.
that's-
Okay.
But it
I know,
has-
but the way
well,
you said it,
all right.
Jim, it sounds like we all had when I broke up with so and so, this is a song I
It
played
doesn't
on
have- no, it
repeat.
doesn't
Is
have
how
to
I
be-
think of it.
I mean, if
so
it
I
is,
don't have
that's
that.
fine, but it doesn't have to be related to your personal experience. It just has to be a great breakup song.
It's funny that you should bring up this topic because I just ran out to pick up
To
some
break
of
up
my.
with Ian, don't
no,
break up with Ian.
No, to pick up some meds, and on the way, the Sarah McLachlan song "I'll Remember You, Will You Remember Me" came up, and that was one of my many, many, many breakup songs.
Wait, save it for the podcast.
Oh, I have so many breakups that I have a plethora of songs.
So many. Okay.
Alanis Morissette.
I mean, again,
was that a breakup song?
I will bet you there probably already is a podcast series just about Taylor
course there
Swift's
is.
breakup song.
Right.
I mean, there you go.
Series. A series.
A series. I'm serious. I mean, not just an episode, a series. All
I hear
right,
ya.
that's my thought. What did we think about the debate?
Wait, I want to say that I never read the notes.
That's great, Peg.
When
so glad
Jim
to hear
sends
that.
them and then
So,
somebody
therefore,
edits them, I
John
never
rewrites them
read them.
for you because you don't read them. But I,
So
who
I
actually
don't
care
care
what they say, might
what
want
they
to
say.
have some, input into what finally goes on.
Peggy, do you ever go back and listen to the
Never.
podcast when
You've
it's
never
over?
listened to a single episode of this podcast.
No.
Me either.
And I'm mortified that it's YouTube. I'm mortified. I hate it.
Please.
Oh,
You look like you hate it.
yeah.
Right now,
I
I'm
do.
seeing
I
nothing
hate
but
it.
hate on your face, Peg. All right, the debate. What do we think?
Wow.
No one
That's
thought
a
anything.
lot of-
Very-
a lot of-
Did
very-
anyone not? Anyone who
Well, the
did not-
transition was a little abrupt. We had a nice conversation flowing.
Yes, and
And
now
then,
it's
and then there was
Well,
I was like, don't do
I'm
it.
like you, John. I'm conscious of the time limits.
okay.
We're fine. Space it out. Space it out. Breathe. It's all good. I didn't watch the whole thing. I had to put the kids to bed. I watched maybe the first half, and I intended to watch the rest because, of course, I guess it's on Disney Plus, which has Hulu, which has ABC, which allows
There's
you
a
to just
million.
watch the
You
whole
can watch
thing.
it on YouTube.
You could.
There's a
Okay,
million.
so I
It's
didn't.
on
I
Stitcher
watched
and
about half.
X.
I watched it about half, and my takeaways were Donald Trump's weirdness has become mundane. It's like predictable. And Kamala is so freaking disciplined. She is just so disciplined. You can just, Jim, I remember you telling me one time when I said I was going to run for public office that I couldn't do it because I wasn't disciplined enough. And I've thought about that a lot. And she is so disciplined. You know that every damn answer she gave had been rehearsed, written, prepared, and she delivered it flawlessly. I mean, she's just a freaking consummate, tight politician who's disciplined and stays on point.
She's definitely
there
more
was some
polished.
classic inside the Beltway carping criticism online that her answers were too prepared.
She
too
wasn't human.
polished.
They all are. They all
Yes,
are.
that's such bullshit. Like any
It
voter
is.
cares. Oh my God, she prepared herself a lot.
Right.
That's such a terrible thing.
For the
That's
president.
not new.
Right. So
It's not new to have these memorized answers that they have rehearsed and rehearsed that they say, even though it doesn't exactly answer the
Yeah, but
question.
Ever.
except I thought she did a good job of fitting in her stuff to what was
Yeah,
going
she
on.
would I mean, I didn't really watch it either. I watched about 10 minutes and then I
Okay,
couldn't
but you've
take it.
heard the talk. What's the talk?
Oh
What do
yeah,
you
I
how do you
got a
put the
billion text messages while it was going on. That was pretty hilarious. A lot
So
of words like fuck nugget.
there, now we have to put an E on the
There's the
podcast.
fuck
okay,
nugget?
Oh,
Is
we
sorry.
lost our rating.
is that an
I
endearing
forgot about
term for
that.
you, Peg, or
I like that one. I don't think I've heard that one.
fuck nugget?
I don't understand how there can be any undecided voters. And even after the debate, apparently people were like, well, she didn't answer some specific thing or give me some in-depth policy analysis.
I would
How
say
can you
that
be undecided in this election?
my theory is that there are basically two categories of undecided. Well, maybe I'll say three. One is there are people who are probably not going to vote at all. They don't pay that much attention. They may vote, but they're not. They don't put a high priority on it.
No,
So
he's gonna
they
vote.
tune out. Okay. The second is there may be a few people on the left who Kamala isn't lefty enough for because
Get
oh my
over
God,
it.
she owns a gun.
Get over
Oh
it.
my God,
So
she's
you're
not
not going to
wanting to
vote
defund the
because
police.
she's not your favorite flavor of ice cream? That's
I'm certainly
ridiculous.
not advocating.
My brother sent me a link for a website that Black Lives Matter did not endorse her because
Is your
of
brother
something
not going to
along
vote
those
for her?
lines. I don't know. He was an
Yeah.
RFK
See,
guy.
that's a possibility. But the third, and I think the biggest and the most important group, is probably people who essentially are philosophically, politically conservative, but don't like Trump. And so, for example, you might say, just for shorthand, they are Nikki Haley voters. They they agree with broadly agree with the Republican Party about the issues, but they don't like Trump, and they're in a conundrum because they may think that philosophically, to the extent you can call what Donald Trump says a philosophy, that Trump is closer to them, but they really don't like him. And that
Yeah.
is really those are the people who probably will decide the election. If enough of them don't vote for Trump, or they vote for Kamala in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, then Kamala Harris will win. If not, Donald Trump will win. And
But
I think
I also
that's the issue.
think Jim, there's some voters that don't like either one of them for whatever
Absolutely.
reason,
Mm-hmm.
and I would project there's more this time than maybe historical, and so they'd rather not vote at all, even though that's not the best approach, than internally say I cast a vote for this person who I don't agree with or don't align with.
I think you're right, Shelley. I think that was more true when it was Biden versus Trump because there were a lot of people on the Democratic side who were just going to hold their nose and vote for Biden because they can't stand Trump, but they don't think Biden was a very good choice. But I also think that is true. But I think the question is, why don't they like both of them? And
Right.
I think that probably, if you break it down, uh, the voters who probably are undecided probably don't like Trump because they don't like Trump. He's a terrible person, and they don't like Harris because they don't agree with her on a lot of stuff. That would be my guess.
And they don't like women.
I I mean,
Or they don't
I can't.
like
I mean, I think that the people who don't
ethnicity.
like women are probably already decided for Trump. I'm not sure they're undecided, but maybe not. I don't know. I mean,
I
obviously everybody has their own reasons, so we're speaking in somewhat broad generalities. I will tell you, I was thinking about this today that there's 55 days to go to the election, and there could be some significant intervening event. There could be a second debate. That's up in the air. Kamala Harris could make a significant mistake. But if she doesn't, and if there isn't a significant intervening event, and we proceed the way we are, it's going to be a very close election, and she might lose. And if she loses, there'll be three critiques. There'll be the inside media editorial page critique that she lost because she didn't do enough interviews and she didn't give enough specific policies, which, in my opinion, is total crock of shit. There'll be the leftist approach, a critique, which is she tried to go to the center and it didn't work. We need to run a hard left campaign, which I think is an even bigger crock of shit. The third critique is if she loses, sorry, Beth, and she loses because she loses Pennsylvania, the critique will be whether it's fair or not that she should have picked Shapiro. A fair, and again, we still have 55 days to go, but a fair, if the campaign were over today, a fair summary of what Kamala Harris has done is she's a last minute replacement candidate who came into a difficult situation. The cards had already been dealt. It's not a particularly strong hand, and she did a very good job playing the cards that she had to play. And she may lose,
Yeah.
but at this point, I don't think you can fault her. I don't think you can say she lost because of her. I think you could say she lost. I mean, it's if you use a sports analogy, it's like a football team way behind puts in the backup quarterback. The backup quarterback gets them back in the game, but they don't quite win in the end. Do you blame the backup quarterback for losing the game, or do you blame the people who
Always.
got them in the
Yeah.
deficit in the
No.
first place?
So you
Always
blame
No, you-
so
blame the
you blame
backup
the
quarterback.
Democratic Party in
Well,
this
I would
case.
blame first and foremost Biden for not getting out of the race a year and a half
Mhm.
Yeah, you
earlier.
blame the
Because if he
first
got out of
string
the
for
race a
getting
year and a half
hurt.
earlier, then it would have given time for an orderly process to pick his successor. Kamala Harris might very well be the candidate. She would have had the benefit of going through the primaries. I think that would have helped her. I think it would have given more time for the country to get to know her. I think one of the
Mhm.
problems right now is there's still people know what they know about Donald Trump, and they know a lot. There are still a lot of people who feel like they don't know enough about Kamala Harris. That's clear from all the polls. That's making people hesitate. If she had gone through the entire primary process, that probably
No.
wouldn't be the case.
Sorry, Jim, I don't buy it. He's a lunatic. There,
They know what they
even
know
if
about him.
even if
Yes.
she's a bad president,
Yes.
she's better than him.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
okay with
Even if
that.
she's
I'm not going to argue with you, certainly. But
no,
again,
just
suppose, for example, and I
he's
know some
crazy.
people that are in this situation, people who really detest Trump but are pro-life.
I know that's what I was going to say. It's about a lot of people are. It's just still about that issue.
Or
But they're voting
which
for
is just
those people are voting for the party, not for the person.
yes,
And
well,
there's
but I
yes.
mean,
that's a
saying
large
that's,
number
but
of
I
people.
think there are people in
Mhm.
that situation who are genuinely torn about what to do. They would, like I said, if it was Nikki Haley or some other Republican of that type, some other competent Republican, I don't think there'd be any question they'd be voting Republican. But I think a number of them are on the fence because it's Trump.
So I don't know that much about these groupings, but in my head, there are people who vote for parties and there are people who vote for people. And I don't know what percentage of the electorate of Democrats and what percentage of Republicans are just going to vote Democrat or Republican because they're like, it's the institution, it's the party's opinion or the party's position. But there's some percentage of both those parties, and then there's some percentage of the independent voters that are voting for a personality, right? And that's where, and I don't know what the percentages are, and I'm sure somebody knows the answer to that. You probably do, but I like to me that's a really important kind of breakdown.
Jeeves is here.
Oh.
Wow.
I'm getting a refill.
Oh,
Woo! Such service. I didn't even
Chardonnay.
ask.
That is nice. Guest appearance.
Sorry.
I love it.
Jealous.
I'm
love
sure,
it
Beth,
too.
you could arrange to have concierge service at wherever.
Sorry,
By
everybody.
the way,
Sorry
where
for the
are you, Beth?
interruption.
Are you in
I'm in my
North
little
Africa?
office
Or-
nook in Poughkeepsie.
What are the odds that you would actually be home? That is astounding.
I am home.
Once again, I love
How
it when
was
you
the
say
dance
Poughkeepsie.
party?
It's a
Dude?
funny
the dance
word.
party was fun,
Where
except
was it?
the husband didn't test out his equipment, kind of like me with the stupid Focusrite tonight, didn't test out my equipment ahead of time. So there were some lapses. There was also a lot of vetoing of his playlist that he organized.
What was the worst thing on his playlist that was vetoed?
I'd have to
Playlists are
think about that.
Playlists are tough.
Yeah.
The Macarena.
Thank God I never mentioned that and it was not played. But
Good.
somebody did either had a Pandora station on in the other room or something else. So people kept leaving
To go hear
the
that
screen
instead.
porch where we were supposed to have the dance party to go dance in the other room when better songs came on. So
So
but
they
it was
were
fun.
voting with their feet. as the
correct.
saying
Yes.
goes.
It was
How
fun.
No, I
appropriate for
like a dance party. I haven't had one in a while.
Have you had dance parties at your house?
Definitely impromptu
Every weekend.
ones.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ah,
Do you
we had a
dance
good
with the
one. Shelley and I
dogs,
had an
Shelley?
excellent one at Heinz's place once when he was out of town.
See, he brings the party with him.
I want to say that as I already mentioned, I did not watch the entire thing. In fact, I watched 10 minutes and then I couldn't take it. But I read stuff today, and something I read was that black male voters do not like Kamala,
Yeah.
and I was wondering what that's about.
Hmm.
I heard that and saw some of that last night on the commentary after the debate, and I was curious about that too.
Did the article that you read, Peggy, go into it at all?
If it did, I did not retain it,
Oh,
or I stopped reading before it got to
after
that.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure that the polling is actually showing that, although to the extent that Republicans have made any inroads to the African American vote, and it's not showing that they're making very much. It has been among African American males as opposed to African American females. But
So I have a question for the two debate coaches. And this is more about the body positioning. So it was very obvious, Trump was very focused on the people in front of him.
Moderators.
I was going to say modulators, but I knew that was wrong. So I'm like, they're not modulating anything. The moderators, very never
according to
ever.
some Republicans, they were actually modulating a little too hard on Donald Trump last night, although I don't agree with that.
But she did a fair bit of looking at him, and I know a lot of it was a little incredulously at some of the things that he was saying, but it was very interesting to see the body habits of her looking at him, and then she looked at the moderators also. But it was a stark contrast to me to see how he was just so forward facing, and I from the debate coaches, I wondered if what's right, what's wrong,
Oh,
was that a shutting her out?
he knows how to be a celebrity. I mean, he knows how to play to a camera. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. He does know that, right? He knows it. He knows how to speak in short grunts that are, grab attention, like they're eating dogs. I mean, that's the shit he does. That's what he does. He knows how to do that. He was a celebrity first before he was a politician.
Yeah, I think
So I think it has
I don't
something to
think
do with
that's
that.
responsive to Shelley's question because yes, he's a celebrity. He's already famous. He's not getting more famous by what he's doing. He's trying to presumably that the strategy that they are pursuing is that they're both trying to persuade these last few, whatever they are, however many they are, undecided voters. Nothing he did last night seemed aimed to try to do that, except
Mhm.
possibly his closing remarks, which were clearly prepared. Um, I would say this, Shelley. I don't think that there's a right and wrong in terms of looking at the opponent, but from the very first moment of the debate, when she went up and offered to shake hands with him, she was radiating confidence
Mm-hmm.
and she was radiating that she was completely unruffled.
She did.
And that is very effective in any kind of debate, high school, college, presidential, whatever you want to say. And throughout, she radiated, I've got this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm he can say whatever he wants. I've got this. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, put it this way: if you were interviewing those two people for a job,
We
who
are.
would you hire?
Yeah, we are.
I
Yeah,
mean, would
you're
you
right.
hire the guy who gets mad all the time,
Right.
or would you
Right.
hire the person who radiates confidence?
Right.
Half the time, that's getting a job is going into the interview and radiating confidence, even if you maybe don't know what you're talking about three
So
quarters of the
we'll
time.
get to Peggy 1 second. I just want to finish this thought. My Ian and I watched every second of it, and we started watching the build up to it even, and it was. I felt like it was a physical shutting her out kind of a move. Like I'm not even going to give you the respect that you're another person on this stage.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. He doesn't. He clearly does not respect. Well, he clearly doesn't really respect a lot of people, but he clearly does not respect women and women opponents. I mean, I mean, I love Hillary, but I mean, I will say one thing, and she's not a great candidate. I thought she would have made a great president, but she was not a great candidate. Joe Biden was not a great candidate either. It's just a relief to see somebody. She's not as good as Obama and she's not as good as Bill Clinton, but she's pretty good.
Hmm.
She's very good, and it's a relief to see somebody that you can root for without going, ugh.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, the Harris campaign is also taking the exactly right approach today. Talk about message discipline. Their approach is the debate didn't win this race. It's going to be close. We have to pull out all stops. We have to run 100 miles an hour from now till election day. Plus, look, right after the debate, they said, let's have another debate, right?
Mhm.
Also, if you have any doubt about who won the thing, if you didn't watch a minute of the debate and you didn't know what
Wait, but
happened,
before we get to that, Jim,
wait a
let's
minute,
have Peg give an opinion because you've
let
just
me
given a
finish.
monologue for 12 minutes. I've
Let
been
me
counting.
finish what I'm
It's
saying.
Peggy's
and Peg
turn.
can
I'm going to
talk for
mute you
the
now. I'm
rest
going to
of
mute you.
the-
All right, Peggy, it's your turn. You get to go, Peg. You get to go.
Uh-oh, look at him. He's
I
still
know.
going.
Go ahead,
You cut
Peg.
the mic.
Oh.
You're doing what ABC
I
should
was,
have
come
done.
on, he was monologuing. He went for
Oh,
12
he's got a
minutes.
lot of
I
good
know, but
things to
I
say.
wanted to just hear what you had to say. I want to hear
Well,
your
and I
take.
wasn't going to comment on that he's storming off. He's done.
Oh.
We're done.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, and is this drama? Is this the end? Our
don't know.
our
Our reboot is
rebooted
going to fail
podcast
right here.
is
3
over.
episodes in. I think our reboot may fail right here.
Well, shoot, I kind of wanted him to hear my 3-part
Oh, maybe he
question.
won't come back. Well, let's
But
let's go with it. Let's see how
I
far we
wasn't
can
really
get.
going to comment on what Shelley talked about, but I will say because I did watch the beginning. I thought her handshake was great, like you guys commented, but I did think when she was talking, her first answer, she did seem nervous, but I thought he seemed nervous too. And then they loosened up, and of course they're all coached beyond
Mhm.
belief. And he wasn't doing any of the facial expressions, and so I thought he was gonna keep it together, and of course he didn't keep it together, which is what we all wanted to happen. But that's not what I was going to talk about. I was going to say 3 things. First of all, one was just that I watched this silly video with a guy who talks about Trump's IQ is 70 and he's not a smart person. And the only reason why he is who he is because he was left billions of dollars or millions of dollars in inheritance. And that the reason why people like him is because they're stupid people with low IQs who understand at his level. It was a super harsh video and talking about how they used to send people to war who had low IQ because it's no loss to society, and then they determined that was it's called the McNamara rule or something. Anybody smarter than me know about this?
Mm-mm.
And in Vietnam, that turned out to be a disaster, and you can't send stupid people to war because it doesn't turn out well. And so now there's some kind of law that anybody who is in the last 12 of the IQ score cannot go to war or cannot enlist in the army or military, but yet they can still vote. So this guy was questioning all that stuff. So first of all, that's one little sidebar thing about that. Trump's actually not very smart. People think he's smart because he's a successful businessman, but he's been gifted the majority of his success. Okay, we don't have to talk about that. The next thing is my friend that I work with, his neighbor has 5 Trump signs in his yard, but his favorite one says, "Remember Mar-a-Lago."
What
Okay,
is that
so
referring
I
to?
thought that was
What
interesting.
does that mean?
Is it when they took the
Exactly.
files and then they didn't show that he did anything wrong, but they've shown that other people have been,
Yeah.
like Biden hid stuff or whoever the other.
Yeah.
Yes. So a sign that says "Remember Mar-a-Lago." That's just
Wow.
crazy. And then lastly, what do you guys think about the importance of the celebrity endorsements?
I hate them personally.
So Taylor Swift at the end of the night endorsing
Kamala.
what's gonna what's that? It seems like it will influence younger people.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think I think that is the segment that is the most undecided from what I've been reading. Like they don't really want the really old guy, but they're unsure about this person who's still really old in their eyes. Um, but when they see Taylor Swift endorse her, then oh, she must be okay.
But I think too, I mean, what I heard after Taylor's endorsement came out was that some idiot on the Trump campaign, I mean, even Michael Steele, the former RNC chief, was like, whatever idiot on the Trump campaign thought it was a good idea to say that Taylor endorsed Trump. And so she was like, I'm shutting this down. Like, this AI stuff is nonsense. I am just going to own this now. I was going to stay on the sidelines, but I did my research. Here's what I'm doing. You do your research. So I thought, as far as also how she did her endorsement, I thought she handled it very well. Like, do your own research. Here's what I'm doing after my research.
Yeah, that's a good message. I like that. Jim, you're muted, Peg. Jim, are you coming back to join us?
Or does John have to unmute him?
I can't
No, he
unmute.
can't.
Okay.
Unmute yourself.
Okay.
So I've sent him a couple messages to
Okay.
unmute himself.
Good decision.
Anyway, it's so the debate. John, you're a former debate coach. Do you think the debate is valuable?
Well, I don't know. For me, it wasn't, but I had trouble watching it. I had difficulty watching it because it feels so artificial. I think we live in a different world where something like a debate prepared at a certain time and place, synchronously presented, is almost out of touch with how we live. It didn't really connect with me at all. But I have to say, I came away, as I said, with thinking Kamala's like, she's damn professional. Like, she is, she is. At the other moment, when you guys mentioned the handshake, the piece about the handshake that stood out to me was when she came on stage. The mics were turned on. Did you guys pick up that she put her hand out? Did you already say this? We already said it. I'm sorry. She put her hand out and she said Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and
She
I
said her full
commented
name.
on that.
I
said,
I was
that's so
blown
dumb. They've already
away by that.
met.
That was awesome because
They
it
have never
said to
actually
the
met.
world.
That's what I heard Charlie told me. They've never met.
It said to the world, right? You don't know me. It was the
Yeah.
best thing she could do walking on stage. It was awesome because I was like, Kamala Harris. I was like, they've never met. It was fantastic. That had to be planned, right? It had to be planned. It was great.
Yeah, I think she did that nicely. And I think the other thing I noticed is it was she came to him. It seemed like a much more confidence. I'm coming to you, and you're going to shake my hand. You blah 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 guy, whether you like it or not, because you're in front of cameras, and it's going to look pretty bad if you don't. So that was a good show of confidence and power.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of notes. Shelley, young voters historically are by far the least likely people to vote. They vote.
They're the least likely to what? To vote?
Any other numbers?
To vote.
Jim.
Yeah.
A little louder, Jim.
There you go.
Thank you.
Young voters are percentage-wise the least likely to vote.
They are, but they still
and to the
vote,
extent
right?
that there's some young voters who are upset because Kamala is not in favor of an immediate Marxist takeover of the U.S. and we should start bombing Israel tomorrow. But that's they're never going to be happy. Peggy, almost everything that you relayed from that video was completely and totally false, and is as bad as anything Trump has ever said.
Okay, awesome. That's what I was wondering. Of course, I didn't do any fact checking, and I was looking at it going.
The military has always had a test people's IQ, and they exclude people below a certain IQ.
Okay.
They did not intentionally try to send stupid people to Vietnam. They did at the time.
That's what this guy said.
Yeah, yes, I realize he said. I believe he said it. He's wrong. The true fact was that up until the late 60s, people in college were exempt from the draft. So there were a lot of people who didn't go to college, who didn't have as much education, who were drafted. They eventually got rid of first they got rid of the graduate student department, and then eventually got rid of the college department, but that was much later. So that was a problem, but it wasn't that they were trying to recruit stupid people. Um, they have, and of course, we all know that IQ tests are notoriously inaccurate and culturally biased, and it's not even clear that they meaningfully test intelligence in any way. Um, so
So I will say there was a moment when Trump spoke last night, and I was like, and he was trying to articulate something about the economy and about inflation. And there was a moment where I did think to myself, this guy is not very smart. Not that I hadn't thought that before, not that I have, but it came up again as I was watching it, and I was like, he's not able to kind of do the economic analysis that you would think that seems rudimentary enough, like the formula they teach you in MBA business school, the first thing, the basic macroeconomic formula. Like he doesn't. There's no way he gets that. Like he doesn't because he couldn't connect the dots between his repeating that inflation is terrible, the worst it's ever been, it's the worst. He had nothing more than that, and maybe that was intentional because he didn't want to get into a debate about particulars where he it just was too detailed for the American public. But I took it as he wasn't smart enough and didn't know it.
well, smart is a relative thing. He doesn't know or care about it, but on the other hand, the core of his base is people that do not trust. If you said that, 50 economists from Harvard and Princeton think this, they would not, that would be the opposite of what they would trust. The core of it is that there is a very significant segment of the population that is very disaffected. And those are the people that are the core of his supporters and the core of the support for most of the right-wing parties in Europe and in other countries, is
True.
people who are very disaffected, who don't trust
Yeah.
the system. And forgetting about winning presidential elections, the real question, the real long-term question is, how do we win back the trust of those people?
But and this raises for me an issue we've talked about on this podcast in the past, and I've talked to all of you personally about it, and Jim, I've talked to you about ad nauseum, which is that we live in a different world because of how we get our news, how we get our
Mhm.
information, how we talk to each other, how we spend our days. We trust. It is so it's cliche at this point to say it, and we've stopped talking about it. We still do live in bubbles. We live in bubbles of information, and in echo chambers, and we're just hearing what we want to hear, and it leads to these horrifying outcomes. There's no point. There's no question in my mind that this is partially tech related. There's just no question.
No, I disagree, because first of all, we've always had this situation where different people at different income levels are different. In fact, there was a time when, depending on what segment of the country you lived in, you got a very different slant on the news. You didn't have any sort of national communication system. That I think that may be a little part of it, but the bigger part of it is, and this is something that is a historically recurring pattern, is that at times of great change, there is inevitably a strong segment of the population that feels overwhelmed by the change and becomes very distrustful, and seeks simplistic answers, as a way of comfort, as a way of sort of getting them through the change.
Have you
And
guys, is there anything, I mean, because Trump's running to be president again. How are these people, how is their life better under Trump, worse under Biden? And I get inflation, and that's real when you're pushing your grocery cart, and what you bought 6 months ago now costs $100 more a week. I totally understand that aspect of it. But how was their life better under Trump? And that they think he's the solution again.
Well, I don't know that they think he's a solution in the same sense of you would think of a solution, but I think what they think is Trump disrespects all the things I disrespect. He disrespects the press. He disrespects the opposition in Congress, and I think that they get a certain sense of validation that there is a guy out there saying "fuck you" to all the things that we want to say "fuck you" to, but we're not in a position to do that.
I see.
I mean,
Okay.
I think that there are, I mean, again, I don't want to overly categorize. There are also people who legitimately think the inflation is a big problem. There are people like who think, I'll make more money with the Republicans because they'll give me another tax cut.
So
Shelley
Peggy's,
and Peg.
yeah, I was gonna say Peggy's hand's been up for a
Oh, I
while.
didn't know who was up
No,
first.
you're fine.
Okay, I sent you guys a text. Take a look at it. My sister-in-law, who lives in Phoenix, sent it to me, and it's an actual billboard in Phoenix today. And then
Oh my
she's my sister-in-law is also she and my brother are kind of they're punk rock. They're in a punk rock band. And so she was texting me last night during the debate,
It's so
and
awful.
Yeah.
when he said Sphere of Terror, she wrote to me and said that would be an awesome punk rock band
It would be name.
name. And then later, when he said concepts of a plan, she said that would be an awesome indie
Yeah.
band name. And I thought that was funny.
see, the debate was very informative.
Shelley, what was your
Inspirational.
thought?
I have a couple questions. One is, how would you respond to people who say she's been in office for 3.5 years and she hasn't done anything? So I will tell you my response, right or wrong. She's a vice president and it's a powerless position. And I said, name a VP that has ever really done, and it's like a holding spot in case the president gets assassinated or dies.
Mhm.
It's not really an active where you have a lot of power,
It's
right?
absolutely correct, Shelley, and I would add a couple of things to that. Bill Clinton gave Al Gore far more responsibility than Joe Biden gave Kamala Harris. Barack Obama gave Joe Biden far more responsibility than Joe Biden gave Kamala Harris. There was in my opinion, a distinct effort by the Biden administration to sideline her as much as possible because they were trying to avoid making her a plausible replacement for him.
Okay.
I think that was a considered strategy on their part. At any time a vice president runs for president, they have the problem of how can they distinguish themselves from the person they served under without just directly poking them in the eye. If she came out and said explicitly, "I'm going to break with Joe Biden on X, Y, and Z," no one would care what she said because the whole story would be Harris attacks Biden, and that would be the whole story, and what she actually said would be lost. So she can't do that. And this is the same problem Gore had when he ran. It's the same problem that even Hillary, although she wasn't a vice president, but she had served under Obama, had the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the line last night, if I were running a PAC, the Harris campaign can't do this, but if I were running a PAC that supported Harris, I would take the following clip out and run it as a tag on a commercial. You'd show pictures of Trump and you'd show pictures of Biden, and then you'd have her saying, "Well, I'm clearly not Joe Biden, and I'm certainly not Donald Trump." And that's the point. She's neither one of those guys. And then she said the thing about it, she's a new generation of leadership, and she is.
Yeah.
And that to me is the way she distinguishes herself from Biden.
And what do
Yeah.
others think? What do
No,
you
I think she got handed such a horrible portfolio. Immigration. I mean, I agree with Jim. They totally sidelined her and gave her the worst problems we face as a country. I mean, I don't mean immigration is the worst problem we face as a country, but how to do it in a
The
way.
politically most difficult.
Yeah,
for a
the most
Democrat.
difficult. Yeah. So they sidelined her and gave her a horrible portfolio. And I think Jim's right that they were like, okay, we got her in here. Now let's just kind of stick her in a corner. I am happy that when Biden decided to step down, he just made it clear right away, she's our candidate. Everyone get behind it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she got I mean, and the vice president has no real duties. I mean, it really is such a, here you are, you're like, the next person who could be president of the United States if anything happens, but you don't really have a big portfolio. And to blame her for some of the stuff is, yes, she's on his team, but her whole job is to be a good, loyal soldier under the president. That's the entire job. And she did that for Biden. And now she has a chance to show, I think, as Jim said too, just the fact that she's younger. I mean, finally, the New York Times is writing about how old Trump is and how old he'll be if he gets elected and when his term ends. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I don't care whether, like I said, I don't know if there's our text thread last night or a different one. I don't care if she comes out with policy that we all get free ice cream on Wednesday. I don't care any of her policy decisions. She's not Trump. I want her to be president.
That's a substantial number of voters. That's what they're taking.
Absolutely.
I'm with you, Beth.
I'm one of those,
Amen.
Steve, obviously too. But Jim, I wanted to push back a little bit on what you said about if she had gotten the nomination earlier, she would have had more time to put out policy.
Or it might have been someone else. That's the other possibility.
Well, right. But if she had, I feel like she actually is benefiting from having such a short timeline before the election that she doesn't have to put out policy. She really can just I mean, she can kind of take responsibility for the Biden administration. She can kind of not, and she can kind of say things. But I have to admit, when I was listening to her yesterday, and she's talking about the tax credit and the house, the affordable housing she wants to build, that I know that those are not center of government. Those are not kind of centrist positions, right? Those are like traditional government's going to step in and do things. And I don't know if that's, I didn't take any of those as particular. I don't find any of these policy proposals she's making. The opportunity economy is completely vacuous. I don't really see a lot of the policies she's putting out there as, I don't know, as all that powerful and useful, and maybe useful for getting swing voters. By the way, that's what I'm talking about. Useful for getting swing voters.
It's historically rare for Democrats to propose a middle class tax cut.
Fair enough.
And that is a move to the center. That's last true. Democrat who did that, who's now frequently broiled for doing so, for moving to the center, is Bill Clinton. Right. Mm-hmm. To say I'm a gun owner, that is not something
that was
Democratic.
That was interesting.
That was interesting.
Typically brag about. Mm-hmm. That's a move to the center. To say fracking is okay, that is a move to the center. To not throw Israel under the bus, that is a move to the center. To talk about proudly the endorsement of Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, that is a move to the center.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those.
If
I just don't think
loses,
her economic
she'll be criticized
proposals...
by the left for moving to the center. You watch.
Fair enough.
I hope we don't ever find out if this is true, but bet my bottom dollar that will happen if she loses. Listen. I have a short quiz I'd like to give all of you.
Shell has one more. Can Shell jump in with her last comment?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So I don't know why it upset me last night, but when I went back and I listened to more of this, why can you educate me on why we call a non-acting president President Trump or President Obama when there's why don't we say former president? We don't say Principal Vonk after he's retired for 5 years.
I heard they did do that. I heard they were calling him former, and then all of a sudden they switched to president.
They went back and forth. I didn't notice if they went former and then just president, but they were inconsistent.
Okay,
I think it's an honorific. I don't think it's a big deal. I think people do it either way, but I think a lot of times it's an honorific to call someone who has been president. I think they do it in other things. I think in some companies, when the former CEO steps down and he comes to a thing, they still call President so-and-so. It's an honorific.
I'm not sure about that.
Shelley, they don't call you former Annie?
No, that was... I was a sophomore in high school. They should, but
former little orphan Annie.
Right. Bet your bottom dollar, Jim. I smiled at that statement.
Very nicely done, Shelley.
That's what made me think of it, Jim.
Shelley, John, not Shell. By the way.
So one more thing to say. The thing that made me laugh hysterically last night is when Trump said, and he was on some ramp, and he said, "I got news for you. Biden hates you."
That was great. Biden hates you.
Wow.
That was great. So if you're worried that she's too close to Joe Biden, according to her opponent, Biden hates her. So
Right.
there you go.
Yeah.
That was so. I cannot believe that was part of the strategy his campaign managers were going for last night. Make sure to mention that Biden hates her. Maybe that's his idea of appealing to swing votes. I'm not sure. So, uh, people who listen to the podcast, and even people who don't, like Peggy, may know that I am an avid fan of the show NCIS, which has had 5 spin-offs and has 2 more coming. Michael Weatherly, who played Tony DiNozzo, and Cody DiPablo, who played Ziva David on the show, are having their own spin-off that will be on streaming on Paramount Plus called NCIS Tony and Ziva. So they have started their own podcast, and I listened to an episode because they had Sasha Alexander, who was on the show in the first 2 seasons, and then was sort of replaced by Cody Pablo. It was great. I really like Sasha Alexander, but at the end of the episode, they asked the following questions, and I wanted to share them with you guys. There are 2 questions I'm going to share. Question number 1. Pick one of the 4. Very nice. Good graphic, John. Pick one of the 4. Pick one of the 4 of the following: forest, mountain, desert, ocean.
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 Mountain.
Forest.
Peg says forest. John says mountain. 2 oceans. Beth, I would have guessed it. You would have said ocean. You said mountain, John?
Yeah.
Why mountain?
Wait, I was just picking these out of the blue, right? There was
No.
like,
Yeah, I know.
I love mountains. I don't know.
Okay.
I love mountains. I love
And
skiing.
you like
I love
forests, Beth?
snowboarding. I love being high on the mountain. I love hiking, mountain biking. I love mountains. I think they're gorgeous. I love freshwater streams. My favorite place in the world is Geneva, Switzerland, where you can see that water, that river going right through the middle of
Oh,
town.
crazy.
And it's crystal clear and
Crystal
like 12
clear.
feet deep.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can see everything. And you're like, this is heaven. How is
Yeah.
it not heaven?
John,
And
of
it's
course, is
dry
shaming
air.
those
I
of
love
us
it.
who've
I love
never
the
been to
mountains.
So,
Geneva, Switzerland.
Jim, all of those are outdoors. So what would you have picked?
Well, I would write in
Good
living room.
Living room. You're right in.
But no, actually, this is how I would interpret the question. This is how I would interpret and answer the question. I would pick what I wanted to look at when I looked out of the window of my living room. So if I were picking what I would like to see, I would pick ocean.
Okay.
I'd like to see. I don't want to be in the ocean, but if I'm looking for a vision, I like seeing the ocean.
Okay, that's worth it. You can say ocean. All right.
Okay, I modified this question, but this is the question. It's a binary question. Which would you rather do? Assuming time travel were possible, would you rather go 100 years into the future or 100 years into the past?
Past.
Future.
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 Okay. When they asked the question, they said 20 years into the future or 20 years in the past. And I thought, why would anyone choose to go 20 years into the past? Because you've been 20 years
Correct.
into the past. I mean,
Yeah.
Dumb. Yeah.
I know what it was like 20 years ago.
Right.
20 years in the future, I don't know. But I do think that if you go 100 years into the past, at least there's some reason to say, I've read about the 1920s, but I don't really know what it was like. And that would be kind of interesting. I don't think, obviously, there's not a right or wrong answer.
Well,
but
if you went 20 years in the past, then maybe you could redo some of the things you did the last 20 years.
but then you're getting into the whole changing history. I think it's more about which would you rather experience. And
What would you pick?
John, shockingly, you picked the future. I'm not surprised about that at all, given your well-stated disregard for nostalgia.
Very good, Jim. You remember.
All right.
What would you do,
What about
Jim?
you, Jim?
What did you pick, Jim?
I think I would definitely, if it was 20 years, I would definitely pick the future. I think I would pick the past for the following entirely
past!
gently reason, which is I have no confidence that human beings in a form we know them will be able to survive 100 years into the future. So
That's why I picked
Well,
the
that was-
past.
that
I
was-
feel like the future
why I
is
wanna see it.
bleak.
Wow.
gonna
you
be
won't
like
be
every-
alive to see it. You maybe get vaporized or something.
Yeah,
Some
there's that.
horrible.
Yeah, we'll all be
No
dead.
water,
You'll just go
Yeah.
forward
no
in the
forest.
I
future.
don't know. I don't
to a
know.
No
blob.
I
forest,
don't
no
really believe all
ocean.
these apocalyptic things, but I think it's
Wow.
possible.
There's that Netflix show that's kind of like softcore porn with that woman who goes back from World War II to like
You
the
lost me at softcore
50,
porn. What's the name of the
17th
show?
century Netflix show,
Is
and
it
she goes,
actually softcore porn? Are
she
there actually
touches a
naked people
rock,
in
and
it?
then she shows up
Or
like
does she touch
in the
other naked
1600s.
people?
Oh,
Is that
Oh, that's the
Outlander?
Scottish
Outlander.
Outlander.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that is the best.
It's like
Wait a minute?
softcore
Is there
porn. It's
actually
like most of
nudity
Netflix.
and sex in the show?
Yes,
Oh, a
Jim.
lot.
It's not
oh,
Sex a
Netflix.
lot. I
Yes.
gotta start watching.
Too
It's
much.
not
It's not
Netflix. It's
Netflix.
on
Unpleasant.
Stars.
Oh, it's on Netflix. It's
Well,
on
the
Netflix.
first,
It's
yeah,
probably
probably the
both on
first 4
Netflix and on
seasons are
Stars.
probably
Not
on,
mutually
but
I didn't make
oh,
it
it's
that far.
fantastic. I love it. I've
All
read all
right,
the
guys.
books.
The guy's hot, but it's like it's
Oh,
too
he's
much.
Peggy
so
has to
hot.
go
It's
eat
too
the
much.
dinner that her loving husband is preparing for.
No, I already
All
ate
right, then
before
what is
the
it you have to
podcast.
do?
We're leaving town at 8 in the morning, and I got to pack.
Takes you
I
12
got
hours to pack.
Well, I got to sleep. I gotta clean my
Where are
house.
you
My
going,
dog
Peg?
sitter's coming. Clean the house for the dog
How
sitter.
nice. Wow.
Eagle River, Wisconsin.
How, you flying?
Uh-huh. Nope, we're driving 8.5
Are you
hours through
driving
the
north
UP.
or south?
North.
Oh, wow.
What are you
through
doing
the
in
UP.
Eagle River, Wisconsin?
My nephew is a fancy hockey player, and we're going to the season opener in Eagle River,
Woohoo.
Wisconsin.
Ooh.
Fun.
Shelley,
is
how was
fun.
Yep.
Miami?
Miami was good. We didn't stay down by Miami Beach. Miami, it wasn't on a beach, but we enjoyed our pool time. We made friends with the bartenders.
Always important.
It
Nice.
stormed, but we
Which is
adjusted and had
nice.
a great.
In Miami, a storm can be very nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Lovely.
We had a great time.
So,
Very
Jim,
good.
any housing updates? Is it
No,
Grand
no, no,
Prairie or is
no,
it New
no,
York?
no housing updates. I will tell you, on the subject of over imbibing substances, I was listening to the Rolling Stones song "Before They Make Me Run," which is one of the few songs in their catalog that Keith Richards sings lead on, and it's generally considered to be a song about Keith facing the crisis in the 70s where he had to at least modify his intake of substances. And I hadn't really appreciated that he has one of the great lyrics that applies anytime. I know, John, you hate listening to song lyrics, but anytime that anyone has overindulged in substances, the line is, I wasn't looking too good, but I was feeling real well. Applies to many, many times when people overindulge, right?
Right.
All right. What else before
Shelley,
we
take
go?
us
That's
out.
it. Let's wrap it up.
Who's rapping?
out.
John? Peggy's rapping, right?
Shelley's taking us out.
Shelley's doing it.
Okay.
Shelley likes to do the end. She likes to have the last word.
Yes, I do. So that's a wrap. That's another episode of In Search of an Argument. We really hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. We always love getting together and arguing and having some discussions. But before we sign off, we have some important bits and bobs to share with you. Big thank you to Ted Henley for our catchy tunes and whoever was bamboozled into doing our editing, particularly on this episode. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, that's great. We're also on YouTube. Just search for In Search of an Argument, YouTube, and we'll come right up.
And if you want to upset Peggy, watch it on YouTube because that will
And
make
see
her
all our
happy.
beautiful faces. If you like listening to other podcast players, we aspire to be on all of them: Stitcher, Castro, Dogcatcher. Sounds strange. Overcast, Podcast Addict, Pocket Casts, and Spotify. I haven't heard of 50% of those. At least one of our listeners has asked what Stitcher is, which was my sister. If you're not picky, you can just listen to us on our website. Frankly, it's easier. Or
John will send you an email with
Yeah.
the episode if you really
if you're picky, John would be happy to have a long conversation with you about
and
the
he'll write you
features.
his own your own personal version of the show notes.
John will have a nice long conversation about the different features of a variety of podcast players. And in the sense of shameless pitches for support, if you're enjoying our show and want to support us, the best thing you can do is like our podcast or forward it to someone else, a friend or an enemy. We've actually gained listeners this way, although we often can't believe it. And saying something nice about us is unquestionably the most valuable piece of feedback you can give us. Money
And
wise,
if you're saying anything about me, refer to me as the endearing curmudgeon with the good skin.
there you go. Money wise, you can buy us a virtual coffee or become a patron on Patreon. Link for those will be in the show
I
notes.
mean, you're trying to get people to actually pay for this podcast, John?
Why not? Yeah.
Because then I would feel like we would have a responsibility to actually do a good job.
We're always on the lookout for fascinating guests. I have a couple suggestions that I've tapped into recently. So if you've got a good story to tell us,
I
you
mean,
know
going
someone.
out with Ian is tapping into him. Yes.
No, these are people. These are friends of our podcast that would be interested. You can find us in the usual social media suspects: X, Instagram, Facebook. We're also on Blue Sky, what Twitter should have become,
That's
but
a
a
TV
much
on
nicer.
ABC,
I
think,
know.
Blue Sky.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. You can
The
email us
Montana
at
Broadcasting Network.
you can email us in search of an argument at gmail.com. Or direct message us, any one of us, or just give us a call. Remember, we're doing this show for ourselves, but we're also here to help and connect with you and have conversations.
Oh my God.
Or some of us are on this.
John,
some of
you've
us,
rewritten it
maybe
and
not
made
all
it
of us.
so long that we
So-
should run like
yes,
a
I
film
know.
while it's being read to entertain
So,
people.
if there's
because just
any
listening to
way
this
you can lend a hand,
is
don't be shy.
impossible.
So thanks
It's like
for tuning
reading a
in.
warranty now.
I'm talking over you. We learned so much from each other and
I
guests
don't
in
blame you,
episodes.
Shirley. It's John's text you're reading.
And still, until next
Maybe we
time,
should get together and rewrite it for John.
stay curious, stay kind, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you. Bye.